Hey everyone, this is Dr. Raspberry. This will be a group of short videos going through your slides, going over the important things that we will not be in class on Monday to do. We ended last class talking about the three theories of intelligence: Spearman's generalized intelligence and specific intelligence, Gardner's multiple intelligences, and Sternberg's triarchic theory of intelligence. Picking back up where we left off, we need to talk a little more about emotional intelligence. If you'll remember in Gardner's theory, he said that there is intrapersonal intelligence and interpersonal intelligence. These skills are necessary to have good emotional intelligence. Remember, intrapersonal is being aware of your own emotions and your own feelings and being able to control them. Interpersonal is being aware of others' feelings and emotions and being able to help them with it. This requires self-insight as well as self-control. These are actually things that we help young children learn at a very young age in toddlerhood, in order for them to be emotionally intelligent. So they are skills that can be learned. Um, these skills allow you to cope with stress, depression, aggressive behavior that may occur in your life. All right, moving forward. Another type of intelligence that was covered in Sternberg's, if you'll remember, is creativity. Creative people, they make things that are novel and useful that the rest of us wouldn't think about. For example, remember earlier I told you about, the person who created the cell phone or the personal computer. Those were things that were not thought of before that someone created. It usually means that they take risk when they do that, and that they are more risk takers in their personality. For instance, Steve Jobs put all his money into the computer. They tend to defy limits. They tend to think outside of the box, and they tend to be more artistic, because that increases their creativity. However, the actual intelligence test does not measure creativity. It is measuring analytical intelligence. It is measuring the academic ability. Therefore, it doesn't cover creativity, and if a person is very creative, it's not going to show up on that test. The third thing that I wanted you to know about, before we move into how the intelligence test was created and designed, is convergent and divergent thinking. And the reason I included this on, with intelligence, is because this is something that we need, students to be aware of and have more understanding about their thinking. Convergent thinking is you want to know the single best answer to the problem. A lot of you come into college wanting to know the single best answer. And so when we don't tell you exactly what's going to be on the test, um, you get frustrated, because that's how you have learned through your earlier education. What we're trying to move you to is a more creative way of thinking, is divergent thinking. Looking at a problem and generating multiple solutions to the problem, and then using convergent thinking to choose the best answer. This is why I'll get you to talk to me and critically think about how you would handle the situation, and then we talk about why two people wouldn't handle it the same way. That's divergent thinking. You've got to have divergent thinking if you're going to go in the helping profession, because two patients or two clients that are dealing with depression are not going to be treated the exact same way. It's going to depend on multiple factors on what the best treatment for them is. Medication may be needed, a talking therapy may be needed, or they may need a more activity-based therapy, depending on their personality. So I can't just put everybody into a box. I've got to be divergent, creative in my thinking, and do what is best for that client. Okay, the next few things we're going to talk about in this PowerPoint is the intelligence test. Give you a little background on the intelligence test. It was designed in the early 1900s by Binet. Binet was asked to produce a test that would help determine what children were academically ready for school, what children were behind, and what children were advanced. And so he created a test for the French government to do just that. Um, and he developed a way where he had a formula to determine what he called their intelligence quotient, or IQ. And it was to take their mental age and divide it by their chronological age and multiply it times 100. Their chronological age, of course, is how many years they've been on the planet. Their mental age was what questions they were able to answer on the test, as he attached age parameters to each question. So there were 5-year-old questions, there were 6-year-old questions, there were 7-year-old questions, so on and so forth. So if you were a kid who were able to answer the 10-year-old questions, your mental age would be 10. If your chronological age is 5, if you put it in the formula, 10 divided by 5 times 100 is a 200 IQ. The problem with this formula is people's mental age and their chronological age are not going to increase at the same rate. You're going to get 1 year older every year, but you're not going to get 2 years smarter every year like this child who started at 10 and 5. They're not necessarily going to be answering 12-year-old questions when they're 6. Therefore, their IQ doesn't stay the same. It actually can look like it's decreasing or increasing. And it is believed that the assumption behind the intelligence test is that intelligence is stable, because we're supposed to be measuring underlying ability to do academic work. Therefore, they had to change how they calculated the IQ. We do what's called a deviation IQ today. This is, we compare you only to people of your age. So if you're 18 years old in 2 months, we're only going to compare you to the average 18-year-old that is 18 and 2 months old. Therefore, if you score above the average 18-year-old, then you're going to have an above average IQ. If you score below the average, you're going to have a below average IQ. You also will be able by that to determine their verbal IQ and their performance IQ. So we deviate the IQ up. Some people are going to score higher in verbal, some people are going to score higher in performance. The good news about the deviation IQ is that since we're only comparing you to your age group, if you took the test a year later, we would only be comparing you to 19-year-olds. Your IQ should stay stable. There are 2 IQ tests that are used today. There's the Stanford-Binet intelligence test. This is the test that was originally designed after Binet's test. That's why it's given Binet's name. And it takes about 4 hours to give. It is all done verbally. This is so a reading disability does not get in the way of showing the child's intelligence. Um, you have multiple different things in the test, and I'll show you, I'll talk about some of those in a minute. There's also the Wechsler scales. I like the Wechsler scales better. They're divided into 3 tests. There's the preschool test, the child test, and the adult test. So if you're 16 or older, you would take the adult test. This way it goes a little bit faster because you're not trying to do all age groups with one test. It takes about 3 hours to give. It's also verbal, so that reading does not get in the way of showing intelligence. So what is an average IQ score? This is what the population looks like in regards to IQ. Most people score in the average range. An average IQ score is 100, but if you score anywhere between 90 and 109, then you are considered average. Okay? Most people in society do score in the average range. If you score 110 to 119, you're above average. 120 to 129, you are superior, and 130 or above, this would be very superior. This would be the genius level, and this is for the Wechsler scales. There's the same distribution on the other side. To be diagnosed as intellectually deficient is a requirement for an intellectual disability. So if someone is diagnosed with an intellectual disability, or what used to be called mental retardation, they should have a 70 or below IQ score. But as you'll see, it's less than 1% of the population that falls into that category. Of course, the lower the IQ score, the more help they will need with daily living. Okay? Um, Before we get into differences in intellectual functioning, I just wanted to say what kind of questions are on a IQ test. In the verbal section, there are things such as vocabulary, so asking you to define terms, similarities, for instance. Similarities may be, how is a tiger and a lion alike? This would be a child question. This is testing, is the child able to pick out similarities between 2 different things? Also, there can be basic knowledge questions. One I can remember is, I think this is maybe even on an adult test, but can you name all the continents in the world? So basic knowledge. Then on the performance test, there's going to be things like working memory that we talked about in the memory chapter, such as giving you a list of, it's called digit span, giving you a list of numbers, and you have to repeat them back to me. You don't get to write the numbers down, you have to remember them and repeat them back in the right order. There's also reverse digit span, in where we give you numbers, and you have to repeat them backwards. As you can imagine, it takes a lot more memory and a lot more brain power to do it backwards. People tend to score lower on the backwards test than they do the forward test. There's also things like block design, where I give you a picture and give you a set of blocks, and you have to make that same design in a certain time limit. These would be the type of activities that you would do on an IQ test. Stay tuned for the next video to go over the differences in intellectual functioning.